Coming up on Theater Talk.
My family...
They would have been Reagan voters, probably.
No,
right?
no. They would have been Democrats because they were working class.
Yeah.
They knew better than to vote for Republicans. When they were working class, you have to be crazy.
When were you radicalized?
Is this a political show?
Yeah,
I thought this was Theater Talk.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
So, Michael, we have one of my heroes of broadcasting.
Fluttering her up already.
I like it.
Joy Behar, who many people know from The View, but she's had a remarkable career in many media. But now she's got a one-woman show at the Cherry Lane Theater.
Called appropriately enough, Me, My Mouth, and I.
Right.
How long did it take you to come up with that title?
Well, you know, it's really... Success and also failures are about my mouth. I get fired, I'm hired, all sorts of things happen around my
Because of your mouth.
So,
when were you fired?
oh, you have to come and see the show. Several times. Several times. WABC, we were talking about that before we went on the air. I was fired from WABC.
Why?
Because of something you said or just...
Who knows? I
do you
can't give it away because it's in the show.
In the show, are you talking about the very first time you were ever fired? And did you think, that's it, I'm done, over, finished?
Well, no, the show has a lot to do with my growth. I started my career when I was 40. Mm-hmm. So I had a whole life before that. Mm-hmm. I was born in an Italian neighborhood. I was a teacher. I worked at a mental hospital, which I always say prepared me for The View.
Yes, I would say.
I was an employment counselor. I did a million jobs. I had a child. I had a husband. I lived in different states. A whole life before then. And then things happened. Things changed. A lot of things came down on me, and I changed my life. Mm-hmm. And that's what the show's about. Basically.
Were you always interested in a showbiz career, though, growing up?
Yes.
You
Well,
wanted to be an actress, right?
Yes. I think I was basically programmed for showbiz.
From your parents?
The whole family.
Did you have a Mama Rose type mother?
No. My mother was not the culprit. It was the whole family.
Where do they have you get up at parties and everything?
Yes, I was the little Miss Shirley Temple.
What would you do?
I would sing and dance and do whatever they wanted me to do. I was like a little trained monkey.
You said your mother wasn't. Who wanted to
My
train?
aunts and uncles.
They wanted a trained monkey.
They wanted entertainment. I was the TV set.
Did you study acting anywhere, though? Or?
I tried. I did. And in my later years, I studied at the HB Studios. I went to the American Academy of Theater, what you call it, where Marlon Brando went.
Yeah, dramatic arts.
Dramatic arts.
Yeah. But then what gave you the moxie that when you were 40, you said,
It wasn't just moxie. It was a series of things, a couple of tragic events, a series of things happening to me that made me say, you know what, this is it, kid, you better do it now.
Are you divulging the tragic event, or is that waiting for the show to...
Well, it's not tragic. I mean, look, let me tell you something, Susan.
Okay.
It's a funny show. Even the tragedies are funny. I'm not from the tragic school. I tell this story to all my friends because people say, I said to my friend, one of my girlfriends, Taffy, who watches this show. So I want her to, she's got a show.
Hello, Taffy.
Taffy.
Hello, Taffy.
She's a stand-up comedian now at an advanced age. She's very good.
Oh, good for her.
So anyway, I said to her, you know, what am I doing? Who cares about my story, really? I said, we have friends who have, their parents turned out to be gay, they got beaten up, they took drugs, but that's a story. And she said, yeah, but where are the laughs? So that encouraged me to do my show because there are many laughs, many. And there's video, there's slides, there's photographs, there's stuff.
I want to just go back to the question I asked you. You remember the very first time you were fired, though?
In my life?
Yeah.
I would say I was fired from a teaching job. They just didn't renew my contract.
Oh, so it wasn't a dramatic kind of a...
Well, it was kind of, I mean, I wanted to stay there, but they let me go because basically it was during the Vietnam War, and I was telling kids not to go.
Oh.
And they found out about it, and they didn't like that, so.
Oh, so you were always political then from the very...
yeah, of course.
Did you grow up in a real hardcore lefty household?
No, they're Italian. How lefty could they be? The Italians are not that lefty. They're a pretty conservative group, a very patriotic group, you know, conservative, left, right-wingers, not right-wing.
Right.
I had, you know, but my family...
They would have been Reagan voters, probably.
No. They would have been Democrats because they were working class.
Yeah.
They knew better than to vote for Republicans. When they were working class, you have to be crazy.
When were you radicalized, though?
Yeah. Am I right?
I know. Why do we have this country full of crazy people? Right?
I don't know. You know what? Gore Vidal used to call this country the United States of amnesia.
Yes.
And I think that's what happened this time too. They just forget.
Right.
They forget.
When were you radicalized?
Is this a political show?
no,
I
we're
thought this was theater talk.
No, but I mean, part of your story is you're outspoken
Yeah.
on a lot of the political.
Well, I always say nobody in my family ever told me to shut up. I came from an Italian family. I was the queen. Talk, say whatever you want, type of thing, and I took them seriously. So sometimes you get in trouble for that. Sometimes you don't, and I like it.
So that's a childbearing tip, really.
I think that that whole thing, children should be seen and not heard, is a bunch of baloney. You let children talk. My grandson, he says whatever he wants.
Now, I'm just going to quickly fast forward to The View. I was talking to you before that when I read you were a teacher,
Yeah.
I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Because in a way, she had the role of a teacher on The View, that she came in every morning, she was ready to go. You were there 17 years?
16,
16 years. I mean,
It's quite a stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a stretch. And I'm sure, the paycheck was okay, so that was
That's right.
a motive.
And it was in New York.
It was in
I
New
had to
York.
work in New York. That was one of my things.
But still, weren't there times when you just thought, oh my God, I can't
do this.
I can't do this.
Well, of course. You don't have that once in a while, don't you?
Are you
wanna
kidding? We
smack
barely
me?
even speak to each other
Yeah,
when we're
yeah.
not on
No,
camera.
barely, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, of course, any job, you wake up and you say, why am I doing this?
Right, right.
Why was I born? Why am I living?
Right.
So, you do say that every job, I think.
But you always would read about these very aggressive show business types brought together. And then I always thought, well, how does that work really?
Well,
not on camera, but how does it work?
I think that it's the yin and the yang. I mean, some people are aggressive and some people are not. Some people are analyzed and some people are not.
Well, there you go.
And so, it becomes like, my philosophy has always been, so what, who cares? I mean, I'm interested in my mental health and my physical health. So nobody's going to drive me to distraction. I won't allow it. So other people maybe get crazier than I did.
And you've come brilliantly to a one-woman show, so there's nobody around to bother you or get in your way. It's all about you.
Exactly. I mean, it took me a while to even get to the point where I would think of doing a one-person show, because I've been doing stand-up for years, 30 years, more than 30 years now. This is a little different. It's just as funny, I think, I hope, but it also has a storyline, and it has pictures and things, like I said. So it's really a play.
more like a play, though,
It's
than
kind
it
of a
is a-
play.
Now, are you directing this yourself, essentially? Or
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you are.
At
So
the
you're really
moment.
working with
At the
nobody.
moment.
You're working with nobody.
No, my husband's producing it. I'm co-producing it with someone. There's a whole group of people. There are people doing slides. I have actual people in the theater who work.
But you're in charge.
Well, it's on me, right?
on you,
I'm
right.
out there. I'm the one.
Yeah.
That's
Is
right.
this something you've wanted to do for a long time?
I was doing other stuff. When I was on television, obviously, I had 2 shows a day for 3 years.
Yeah.
So that was a lot. And then I would do stand-up sometimes, too. So then all that sort of ended, and I had a whole year of relaxation last year, because I left a year ago.
That's right, that's
I
right.
was like, I couldn't believe how enjoyable that is, to have all this free time.
But then why are you going back in?
I know. Well, I do like to have things to do also,
Yeah.
so I did this.
Well, now I just want to ask you, you are over 50, let's say.
Thank you,
And
Susan.
you look,
I should hope so.
you look,
My daughter's 43. I hope I'm over 50.
you look fantastic. You're full of energy.
Yeah.
What's your biggest health tip?
I don't know. It's genetic.
Genetic. Okay.
It's genetic. I don't know. I have a lot of energy, and I enjoy life. I don't want to die ever.
Yeah, right. Like our friend Joan Rivers said.
Oh my God, that's so tragic. I still can't get over it.
Yeah. You were pretty close to her, I would imagine.
I was very friendly with her. Yeah, we were friends. She was really funny. She was the role model for women comedians.
Absolutely.
This is the
No
one who
question.
started it. She and Phyllis Diller, and there was a couple of others. Jean Carroll back in the day. I don't know if you know who she was. And there were women comedians along the way.
And Minnie
but-
Pearl, who had the hat with
Yeah, I never could relate to her. She was too country for me.
An Italian girl from New York. Okay. Take the price tag
But
off
she
the
was
hat.
funny. I got that she was funny. It was like Red Skelton. I didn't get him either.
I never got him. No.
No.
I was.
You know, I liked.
Clem Cadiddlehopper. You're like, what?
Before we go, I do want to ask something that you touched on when you found out you were no longer on, you weren't on television. You had a year for free.
Yeah.
And you enjoyed it.
I did.
Because I know there's some people who, for them, the microphone or the camera is a kind of addiction, and it's very difficult. For
No.
them to
I don't live on TV, Michael. Unlike you, apparently. You and the radio also. You live in the media.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I'm not as established, I must say, as you are.
But
So I'm not quite
what would
in-
happen if you were not on television or on the radio?
Or not have a column as I have in the newspaper.
Yeah, you have a lot of outlets for your rage, for your Republican
Not
rage.
enough of them.
You know, I would like to think, but of course I don't know, but I would like to think that, like you know, it was a great run and then it's not there, but there are other things to do with one's life.
There are many things to do. Watercolors. There's things. There are things to do.
And it must be nice when you don't have to read a book for someone you're going to be interviewing the next
Well,
You don't do that anyway.
He wings it. He wings it.
Yeah, I do.
Well, you know, the thing about that is that I always had to be on top of everything. So you couldn't watch TV without calculating, what am I going to say about this?
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to be now on top of all of these annoying elections that just took place, you know? So-
Well, we get to find out more about your life and your career and its ups and downs in Me, My Mouth, and I, Joy Behar's new one-woman show at the Cherry Lane Theater, running now as the Caesarean, right?
Started November
Yes,
6th,
yes,
going to December 21st only, and only 4 shows a week. That's it.
Whoa.
Limited run, baby. So run to the
Well,
theater
and,
now.
and then are you going to go off and do a film or something?
No, I didn't want to
That's
kill
it.
myself.
Okay.
What happens if it takes off and they want you to
Well,
50 city tour and
Hey. No, like I said, I enjoyed the year of doing nothing.
all right, well, it was a great pleasure having you on Theater Talk.
Nice to meet you two.
I get a job at Good Morning America as a receptionist. And I was the worst, let me tell you something about that. I was the worst receptionist in the history of Good Morning America. I was the worst receptionist. People would call me at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm on the switchboard. Good morning, America. Good morning, America. Good morning, America. Good morning, America. They call me from Canada, and they say, like, where's Joan London? I say, how the hell do I know?
Hello. I'm sorry.
Who's that?
It's for me.
Michael.
What?
Michael. How's this for a title? On a stool at the end of the bar.
I've had some experience in the area over my time, I must say. But it is a fine new title for a play that, frankly, we know nothing about, but is written by a good friend of ours, Mr. Robert Callely, Bob Callely, as we like to call him. Bob has been in the theater business for many, many years. He ran the HB Studios for Uta Hagen, and now he has decided to put himself out there as a playwright. Now, you were a lawyer.
No.
You're producer,
Producer.
He ran the American Theater Wing.
ran the American Theater,
Theater
all those
Wing,
kind
the
of
Theater
things.
Development Fund.
But were you always secretly a playwright underneath it all?
Well, I'll tell you just a very quick story. When I was at the University of Wyoming back in the 3rd century, I had a very tough English teacher my sophomore year, and all the football players liked to take her because she loved football and she passed them all to keep them eligible. And I didn't want to take her class, but I had to. It was the only option available for this time period. So I sat way up in the back, and all these football players were down here. And at the end of the semester, we had to pass in our papers. And she came into class, and she was a mean cookie. And so she was going through and giving them paper, and she said, Bob Callely, Mr. Callely. And I started to get up, and she slammed the paper down on the table. She said, I'll see you after class.
Scary.
And so everybody left, and she picked up the paper, and I walked down tentatively, and she said, Mr. Callely, I don't know what to do about you. She said, you tell the best stories, but you have the worst grammar. So I'm giving you an F for grammar and an A+ for content and a C for the course. I only heard the F. I didn't hear you tell the best stories for 30 years. It was so painful.
Yeah.
That F, that big red F on the paper, that's the only thing I saw. I never saw anything positive about it. And years later, when I started writing, I thought, I remembered her, Dr. Winslow, Annie Winslow. I remembered her, and I thought, oh my God, you missed. You tell the best stories. You can learn grammar, but something about stories that they kind of come out of the ether.
Oh, yeah.
As this play sort of came out of the ether.
Well, give us a sense of what this play is about. I know it's got a twist in it, so you don't want to give it away, but give us a sense.
It's got a huge twist. But it's a Jersey, it's a family in western New Jersey over Cherry Hill, Camden County kind of thing. And Tony owns a lumberyard. He's sort of a upper blue collar, young Robert De Niro type. And he's in a relationship with a woman he's been with for 10 years who's helped him raise his 3 kids, now young teenagers, by his first wife who died of drugs and overdose. And 10 years into this relationship, though she would never marry him, some horrible, deep, dark secret falls out of the past that just shatters everybody.
Oh, that sounds good.
When you were running HB Studios, were you writing plays then too?
Yes.
Were you showing them to Uda and?
Well, I got to tell you something. This play is the second of a trilogy that I call my stories from the 1980s. And the first play involved somebody who was stricken with polio, and it's quite whatever. And I started writing, but I just never, because I'd produced and all that, but I never believed in myself as a writer. I came from a troubled background, so I didn't have a lot of confidence, and so it's kind of been a struggle. I just would put them on the shelf. And one day somebody said to me, who knew I was writing, "Are you ever going to let me read one of your effing plays?" And asked me several times. So finally I took it in the office one day, and I thought, well, if they ask again, I'll let him read it. And he did, and that night I got a phone call saying, "I cannot believe you've written this. What have you done with this?" And he wanted to do a reading of it, and he put together, it wasn't this play, it was another play, and he put together a reading with Nancy Marchand and a whole wonderful cast. And I was just a nervous wreck. I'd never been through anything like this before. And I let them talk me into inviting 100 people to see this reading.
Oh.
And he said, "You sit over here and you don't pay any attention to anybody that's over here." So I was the only one over here. And so the play starts, and Nancy and the cast, they just had a couple of days rehearsal, and suddenly there was this burst of laughter back here. And I turned, because I thought somebody had come in late and drops it, that they were laughing at something that happened back here, and I wondered what it was. And I turned and nobody was doing anything back there. And then at the same time as I turned back around, there's another burst of laughter, and I realized they were laughing at what was going on the stage. And I sat down like this and said, "Oh my God, I wrote this."
You wrote that.
I couldn't believe it, and so that was a really changing moment in my life. But I didn't believe in it well enough to try to
go any farther than the reading?
So then I wrote this play, and the exact same thing happened with another friend of mine that said, "Are you going to let me read anything?" And I let him read this play, and he said, "I've got to do it." He ran a theater out in San Diego, and he said, "I've just got to do a reading of it." So I flew out to LA for Christmas, and I went down to see a reading of the play down there, and it was a real rough kind of go, but it really was quite an amazing experience. So then when I went to work at HB, I began to do readings and things like this. And we did a big reading of it down at HB 12 years ago.
Oh, so this has been quite a while.
Yes. Yeah. And the next day my phone rang, and it was a Tony Award-winning Broadway producer that wanted to do this play. I made a couple of bad choices, of which I had to live with the consequence, and it didn't happen. I decided to go with somebody else who also wanted to do it. And that person never got it off the ground, and the other producer would never speak to me again about it.
The heartbreak of the theater.
The heartbreak of the theater. And suddenly 10 years went by, and Michael Parva,
who's directed it,
who had come down to see that reading 12 years ago with the same producer, ran into me on the street maybe 10 years ago and said, "What's happened to your play? That wonderful play?" And I said, "Well, blah, blah, blah." And I told him about the bad choices I'd made and living with the consequence. He said, "Oh, well, could I do it?" Well, nobody else is. Anyway, he called me last October, and I was getting ready to go to London for an extended period of time. And Michael said, "Bob, what's happening to your play? I want to do your play. It's time. We just got to do it. We just got to do it." And I said, "Well, thank you, Michael. Yes." I said, "Do you have the money?"
Yeah, minor detail.
Minor detail. The same minor detail before. And there was this silence. And he said, "Well, we've got some of it. Actually, we were kind of hoping you'd help us with all of your experience." And so I'd been
Don't put your own money in the show.
I know. Well, I got caught by Mr. Madoff, so I don't have the money to put up anymore.
Yes,
But anyway, I put down the telephone, and I just wasn't going to think anything more about it, because I'd been down this road with this play for 10 or 12 years. And my assistant was at work, Tom Rhodes. He's a young singer and actor and works for me. And he said to me, "What was that?" And I said, "Oh, da-da, and they want to do the play, but they don't have the money." And he said, "Bob, God is saying to you, God is sending this opportunity, you've got to do this." And I said, "Well, I suppose I could maybe write to some friends and whatever." So to make the long story short, I sort of got in gear, and I helped them raise the money. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to believe after all these years that a week from today, this play is going to be opening for previews at 59 East 59th Street.
Yes, and when this show airs, it'll be up and running.
It'll be
and
on, moved to Broadway.
Right.
Tony nominee Bob Callely for On a Stool.
Oh, well, no, off Broadway. God should hear you that it would be a Tony nominee.
I wanted to ask you, hey, do you have a Madoff play in you? You had the experience with Bernie Madoff. Is there something that's going
I
to
tell
come
you,
from the
that
ether
was-
there that you want to write about?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. It was really a startling experience. I had run the HP Playwrights Theater for Uda until she died.
Yeah.
And then after a while, it just wasn't so much fun anymore. And I had enough money. I wasn't rich, but I had enough money that I could live my life sort of okay.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, you want to write? Write, Callely, just write. And so for 3 or 4 years, I was home writing, and I had a routine. I would get up in the morning, make a protein tea, get the New York Times, go to the gym, work out at the gym, come home, write, and then get on with my day. Write for a few hours and get on with my day. And on Friday, December 12th, I think it was, of 2008, I turned on the radio in the kitchen, and the first words out of the box were, "And Bernard Madoff was arrested last night." I cannot tell you the impact those words had on me, because 95, 96, 97% of my life savings were with Mr. Madoff.
How did you wind up going with him? How did you meet him?
Well, I have some wonderful, dear, fantastic, very rich friends who, when I was putting my life back together at one point, said, "We have a wonderful investment guy. Let us..." So I didn't have none money way back when. Bernie Madoff wouldn't take me. And these people opened a joint account with me so I would have enough money. And then suddenly, a few years later, when I had enough money for my own account, we separated the accounts, and I suddenly had my own. And I would sit home every month and get these big envelopes, Bernard Madoff LLC, and I'd open it, and I would look at this money.
I'm rich.
And I was thinking,
And you
"Gee,"
never suspected these returns are unreal?
and neither did they.
Nobody did.
And they were billionaires.
Nobody did.
Did you ever meet him? Did you ever spend any time with him?
Never, ever met him, never laid eyes on him. Oh, a funny, wonderful experience. I mean, that day, I thought, what are you going to do? I mean, I was just in a panic. Okay, live in the moment. Just stay, go to the gym, find out what's going on. And I did that. And I went down in the elevator and lived on the 7th floor of this building. The little guy that works at the desk for 30 years, I watched him grow up and go to college, but he's still there. He'd put the mail in the boxes every day.
Oh, and he saw the...
And he saw these big envelopes. He said, "Bob, that Bernard Madoff LLC, those envelopes you get, is that the..." And he pointed to the newspaper on the desk, and I said, "Yes, buddy, that's it." And he said, did he, and then he realized he was going too far. And I said, "Yes, buddy, he got everything." And I went on to the gym.
Oh, my God.
So the next day I'm coming in, still in a state of shock, and I haven't a clue what I'm going to do with my life. I mean, I knew nothing at that point. And I can't even tell you what I was thinking. I just don't know. And I was trying not to panic and just stay in the moment. I came in. I did know, as I walked in the front of my building and Buddy was sitting there at the desk, that I didn't want to talk to anybody, least of all him. So I just head for the elevator, and Buddy gets up and he comes over and he said, "Bob," he said, "how are you?" I said, "I was so worried last night I couldn't sleep. My wife was worried about you." And I met his wife. He said, "My wife was worried about you." He said, "I just couldn't sleep." Oh, he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." Now, by this time I'm in the elevator and I just want him to go away, but I'm smiling and saying thank you and thank you. And he finally started to let the door close. And he pulled it open and he said, "Bob, I've got some aspirin or some Advil at the desk if that will help." And I said, "Oh, buddy, thank you. That is so sweet. But I've got arsenic upstairs."
Oh, whoa.
He didn't get it. But as I was going up the elevator, I realized, and I laughed at my own joke, and I knew that he got my money, but he didn't get my sense of humor, he didn't get my creativity, he didn't get my friends, he didn't get my love of life. He just got some stuff. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I suddenly remembered, looking out my kitchen window, that when I was a kid, 20 years old, arriving from Wyoming, without a clue what I was going to do in New York City, thinking one night, I just have to find a place to sleep tonight and then I'll figure out what to do. And I realized that 50 years later, that's what I had to do. I just had to start over. And unbelievable things fell out of the trees. You know, I'm sort of a believer of the universe. If you're going where you're supposed to be going and taking the steps you're supposed to be doing, the universe will kind of move in behind you and move you along in that path. And since 2008, I cannot even tell you the things that have happened that have been so extraordinary in my life that have just kept me going. And then now, at the age of 74, it's hard to say
You're
that.
74.
At the age of 74, to
Don't look it.
have a play produced for the first time. Because, you know, I produced 40 or 50 plays and
Yeah.
musicals on tour and all around and worked with some really wonderful people all of my life. But to have a play produced,
Your own play.
my own play.
Well, I give you an A+ for that Bernard Madoff story. That's a play that just could be good.
It is quite a story, I must say. And
Yeah.
it's, it goes on.
You can reflect happily on it now that everything's worked out.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
But as he said, though, there's the kick in the gut, and then you think life goes on.
Oh, and friends kept calling me right after it happened. And this one friend of mine, Sterling Zinsmeyer, called me and he said, "Are you okay, Bob? Are you okay?" And I was just so sick of people saying, I said, "Yes, Sterling, you don't have to worry. I'm not going to jump out the window. If I'm going to kill myself over this, I'm going to get on the plane and fly to Paris and jump in front of the Orient Express. So unless you've heard I've gone to Paris, you don't have to worry." And Sterling said, "Oh, Bob, now if you're going to do that, at least zip yourself up in a body bag so you don't bloody that beautiful tray." So at least we could all laugh
Laugh
about
at
it.
the whole thing. All right, the play is On a Stool at the End of the Bar by Bob Callely. Robert Callely, is that your official playwriting title?
That's my official playwriting title.
Directed by Michael Parva, and it is running until December 14th at 59 East 59th Street, which happens to be one of my favorite theaters here in town.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being our guest.
Thank you for having
Thank
me here
you.
today. Thanks.
This is confession. You can't talk about this to anybody. No one. You understand? Now, I don't know what to do, but you got no right to say a single word to anybody. About me, about the kids, nothing. I won't be talking. Confession.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Corey and Bob Dinelli Charitable Fund, the Noel Coward Foundation, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, plus public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency, and the Theater Development Fund's Technical Accessibility Program, which helps provide closed captioning.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.